Okay, a couple of announcements. One of them is just to remind people, and I think I'll send out an email about this as well. The slides are all available as part of the podcast. So if you go to iTunes and look at the screencast, all the slides should be there. And then I post them on VSpace after the lectures because I'm usually working on them until the last minute when we're actually coming into the lecture. But sometimes that can take a longer time, so they're definitely there on the screencast if you need to find them. Let's see, are there any other? I don't think there's any. Oh, the other thing is that I won't be there for office hours today because we have a job candidate coming in who's talking about development. So let me know if you were planning to come in maybe just after class, and we can see if we can arrange another. We'll see if we can arrange another time to meet. Any other questions? Okay, so today we're going to find out about how children learn to talk. And the first thing to say about that is that understanding language is actually an incredibly complicated and multifaceted ability. Let's just take that first sentence that I just gave, which I spoke in whatever it was, less than a second probably, and which everybody in this room had no trouble at all understanding. And think about what you actually had to do to be able to hear that sentence and understand what it meant. In other words, to be able to have language. Well, one thing is that the sounds of that language actually are, the first thing you have to do is decode the sounds of the language, figure out which sounds were important and which sounds weren't important. And it turns out that that's actually a very, very complicated, difficult thing to do. Because the sounds that you're hearing are going by very quickly, and there aren't any pauses between the sounds. When I write up a sentence on the board like this, I have to make separate letters, but when you're actually listening to the sentence, all you're hearing is this very, very, very fast stream of different sounds. And on top of that, the sounds that are important to so that problem about decoding the sounds of language is called the problem of phonology. So it's trying to figure out the sounds of language. So there's no breaks or pauses between the sounds. The sounds are going by extremely quickly. And even more significantly, the sounds are different. The sounds that are important and the sound contrasts that are important are different in different languages. So for example, if I was producing that sentence and giving it to someone who was a native Japanese speaker, when they got to that word learn, one of the things about learn is it has an L at the beginning and an R in the middle. And if you were a Japanese speaker, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between L and R. That difference doesn't make a difference in Japanese. So for a Japanese speaker, those two sounds, the L and the R in learn, would be exactly the same sound. They wouldn't be able to even hear a difference between those two sounds. On the other hand, if I were speaking Chinese and that sentence was in Chinese, there would be differences in the tones in that language, which I wouldn't be able to hear. Do we have some Mandarin speakers? Yeah, okay, could you give us that sentence in Chinese, in Mandarin? Or something like it? Okay, great. So as you can hear, in Mandarin, what happens is that the tones of the language, how stressed a particular phoneme is, makes a difference in the meaning of the language. So if she had said that with exactly the same sounds, exactly the same phonemes, but a different pattern of tones, a different pattern of highs and lows, the sentence could have meant something completely different. So the first thing is that you have to pick out the sounds of the language, and you have to figure out which sounds are going to be important for your language as opposed to somebody else's language. The next thing that you have to do is actually figure out what the words of the sentence are and how to put those words together. So again, although when I write the sentence there are breaks between the words, if you're just hearing it, if you just look at the sound stream, there wouldn't be any breaks between the words. You just hear this continuous stream of sounds. And if you've ever been in a foreign country and listened to a foreign language, in fact, that was if you think about your experience when you were just listening to that sentence in Mandarin, it wasn't just that you didn't know what those words meant. I'll bet that nobody here who wasn't a Mandarin speaker even knew what the words were, which of those sounds actually constituted separate words. So the first thing is that you have to separate that stream of sounds into separate units, into separate words. And even once you've separated out all those sounds into separate words, you have to figure out how those words go together to convey a particular meaning. So for example, if I had said, children going where today, about, out, find, talk, to, learn, right? You guys would have had no idea what I was talking about, even though I just said exactly the same words. And if I said, for example, today we're going to talk about how children learn to learn, okay? Suppose I said, today we're going to talk about how children learn to find out, that would have been a reasonable sentence, but it would have been something that meant something completely different from the sentence that you actually heard, right? That would have been a sentence about children's cognitive development and how they learn to find out things, not a sentence about how they talk. So exactly the same words in a different order can mean something completely different. So those two basic facts that we have to figure out what the words are, and that some orderings of words, those three basic facts. We have to figure out what the words are, we have to figure out what the right way is to string words together, and we have to figure out that the order in which we string words together can mean something different. Okay, so the particular order that we, sorry, now I'm getting it. This is a terrible, every time I give this lecture, if you start thinking about language, then you're going to stop being able to talk. That's kind of a given. All right, let me start again. Okay, so then we have to figure out, part of what syntax is about is the fact that we have to string words together in some sequences but not in others. And then the third thing that language is about the fact that some sequences will mean one thing and other sequences of the same words will mean something else. Okay, good. My language faculty seems to be more like that. Another thing, and that's called syntax. Another thing we have to figure out about is what's called semantics. So we actually have to figure out what it is that all of those words mean. And if you look at even a very simple sentence like this, you can see that a lot of those words, things like to or out, are actually quite ambiguous. It's not at all obvious what they mean. They can mean many different things in different kinds of contexts. So when I say find out, that seems like a really different meaning of out than when I say I'm going to go out the door. What's the relationship between finding out and going out the door? It seems like those are completely different meanings. And yet somehow you have to figure out that the out in find out means something that's kind of different from the out in walking out the door. So we have to take the meaning, figure out what the words mean, and that's complicated. And as I just said when I was talking about syntax, we also have to figure out what the combinations of words mean, and that's complicated. And finally, we have to figure out what's called the pragmatics, or the communicative force of language. So for example, you all know that when I say that sentence, I'm not really making a prediction about what's going to happen so much as saying, as giving a kind of order, right? Even though that sentence sounds like I'm making a prediction, oh, this is what's going to happen today. What it really means is an order. It really means, okay, sit down and find out today about how children learn to talk. And somehow you have to figure out that that is what that sentence meant. And notice also that you all know that the context of this is that I'm giving a lecture. So if I said to you, today we're going to find out about how children learn to talk, if someone among you had said, no, actually I don't think that's what's going to happen today. I think what's going to happen today is we're all going to sit here and check our email and think about our date next week. That might very well have been true, but it obviously wouldn't have been appropriate in this particular pragmatic context. So you have to figure out not just what the sounds are, what the words are, what the words mean, what the combinations of words mean, but you also have to figure out what's appropriate in this particular context. What's the significance of this language in a particular kind of social setting? And that's what's called pragmatics. And the amazing thing is that by the time babies are 5 years old, in the first 5 years of life, they've solved all of those problems for their particular native language. And they've done it without anybody teaching them, without any explicit instruction. And pretty much all of the babies that are ever born are going to solve that problem. And it's an incredibly hard problem, so hard that even very sophisticated computers can only just barely begin to be able to solve little bits of it. And as always, one of the things I say about this is it's really kind of like the problem, what I think of as a hummingbird problem. Everyone knows that hummingbirds fly, but no one knows exactly how it's possible. And there are a lot of those problems in developmental psychology. So we all know that children learn language, but everything we know says that it should be completely impossible. So now let's talk about what actually happens as children, or at least English-speaking children, are starting to learn to speak. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an example of one very concrete context, and I'm going to describe the sorts of things that children say as they get older and learn more and more language in that particular context. So the context is one of the classic relationships of all time, which is the relationship between children and cookies. So it's a child trying to get a cookie. And what will the child say as the child is there trying to get cookies? Okay. So before children say a word, they're already starting to use gestures. And remember, we talked last time about the fact that when babies are about 9 months old, they're already starting to point, and they're also starting to reach for objects. And interestingly, not only are they reaching for objects, but they're actually using their reaches in a communicative way. And there's actually studies that show that if you look at the shape of babies' hands when they're really reaching for something, and when they're going like this, it's actually different. So when babies are going and that baby's going cookies up out of view, that baby's actually using that reach as a way of communicating something. I want something, please come and help me. Not just as a way of actually seriously trying to reach for the cookie. Yeah?
Is that why it's so easy to teach the babies that language?
I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah. Let me get to that in a second. So we know that well before babies are using words, they're already using these kinds of gestures. And by the time they get to be a little bit older, say about a year, you start seeing combinations of these gestures and the beginnings of words. And the words to start out with don't really have a structure of words. Very often they'll just be a kind of sound, consonant sound, and then a whole bunch of different vowel sounds. So for instance, if the baby is a little bit older, is likely to say things like da, 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 pointing to the cookie. Or else say something like ma, 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 ma. And ma, ma, ma very often means help, basically. It would be nice to think that it means mama, but actually to start out with, it means just come and take care of me. In fact, this led to a certain amount of disappointment for me, because when Augie was first starting to talk, he said ma, 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 ma. And I was delighted because he came to our house and he turned to me and he said ma, 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 as he was trying to get things. And then about a month later, suddenly I was no longer ma, 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 ma. It started out being anybody can help me. And now if I said, oh, it's ma, 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 he would point to the door and say ma, 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 ma. And it was clear that I didn't count as being mama anymore. I was just another person out there. Fortunately, now I'm Gram Gram. So now if he wants a cookie, he can turn to me and say Gram Gram, ma, 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 ma. Okay, so there's to begin with, you see these combinations of vocalizations and gestures. And that brings me to the question about sign. One of the things that we know is that babies who are deaf, babies who are learning sign language as their first language, turn gestures into signs, start producing signs in sign language at about the same time that hearing babies are starting to produce words. But and that's led to and what that means is that you can teach babies to sign just as easily as you can teach them to speak. Babies sort of surprisingly seem to be designed to learn signs as well as learn speaking. But signs are a little more confusing because signs, of course, are much more continuous with these early gestures like reaching and pointing. So sometimes it seems as if babies are actually learning signs earlier than they're learning words. But there isn't actually very clear evidence for that. So it certainly is true that babies can learn signs very easily and quickly the same way that they learn words. And it's also true that babies typically gesture before they talk. But if you are really serious about, okay, I'm just going to count things that are really linguistic signs in sign language, not gestures, it's not obvious that signing comes in any earlier than talking does. It's a fun thing to do with babies, and moms often are very pleased to see that their babies can understand sign, but it's not clear that sign actually makes the babies learn any faster or that it's easier for babies to learn sign than it is to learn stuff in language. Okay. Now, how about when babies are actually starting to, so babies start out making these vocalizations and gesture pairs. When babies start hitting the middle of the first year, they actually start producing their very first words. And you can tell that they're the first words because they've got much more phonological structure than just those dads and moms do early on. And they're no longer just associated with a particular gesture or a particular context. Now they can be used in lots of different contexts. And some of the very, very first words that children might use in this context of trying to get cookie are things like dare, or babies don't usually are able to pronounce dare, but they very often say dare, pointing to something that's important or relevant to them. A word like more. Yeah. Do they, sorry? We're just going to get to that. Another good question that's anticipating where it is that we're going. That's the next slide. So they'll say things like there or more. They'll use words, use names like nouns like cookie or mama, and then they'll use words for things like locations like up. And one of the things I actually did in my dissertation was to show that although those names are the words that we pay the most attention to, things like cookie or mama or, in Augie's case, blueberry pancakes, in fact, when babies are starting to talk, they also are using these relational words like there, more, up, no, uh-oh, all gone. And those are rather interesting because they're not things that we would obviously think of babies as saying, and yet very consistently different babies use these same kinds of words. Things like there and mama, there and more. Okay. Now, when the babies are first starting to talk, and this gets to the next point, one of the very characteristic things that they do is something called overextension, which means that they use a word to refer to many more different kinds of things than we typically use it to refer to in the adult language. So the baby trying to get cookies might say candy instead of cookie, or might say moon instead of cookie. And this is a kind of charming list of some of the overextensions that have been reported in the literature. So one of my favorites is that third one. That's Melissa Bowerman in 1978, who had a baby who says moon for a moon, a half moon-shaped lemon, the chrome dial on the dishwasher, half a Cheerio, or a hangnail. Now, those don't seem to make any sense at all if you're trying to think about the concept from the adult perspective, but you can see why the baby might think that moon actually applies to all of those different things. They're all sort of round or crescent-shaped or bright or in the sky. And that's actually quite typical of babies when they're first starting to talk. And there's some debate about, is it just that if you've only got 10 words, you're kind of stuck using those words for everything? Or is it that the babies really have different concepts, different ideas about how things in the world should be organized, and their overextensions reflect the way that they're organizing the universe. When babies are a little bit older, they start actually, for the very first time, putting words together into combinations. And typically what they're doing is putting words together into two-word combinations, two-word strings. So the baby who's trying to get a cookie might say things like, Mama, cookie, or more cookie, or here, cookie, or cookie up. And there's a couple of interesting things about these first two-word strings. Augie, by the way, had his first two-word string about a week ago, where he said, light off, light on, because turning switches is his idea of complete heaven. So light off and light on were his first two-word combinations. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about these two-word strings. One of them is that when children start putting these together, they already seem to have the idea that only some orderings, only some combinations of words are right in English and other ones aren't. So, for example, when babies are putting together these two-word strings, they'll say more cookie, but they won't say cookie more. So they already seem to have some idea about syntax, about this kind of idea that the order that you put words in is actually important for their meaning. And in fact, when babies get a little bit older, they actually start implying this fact about language, which is that different orders can have different meanings. So the baby might say, Mama, cookie, when he wants Mama to get him a cookie to tie up, but say, cookie, Mama, when he's got the cookie and he's actually giving it to Mama. So already, just when they still only just have two words, the babies recognize this very basic fact that different orderings of words can have different meanings. One of the things I always say is it's a tragedy of grammar that John loves Mary does not mean the same thing as Mary loves John. And babies already seem to be appreciating that tragic fact about grammar, even when they're just starting to put two words together. Okay, what happens after that? You might think that after the two-word strings, you just have three-word strings or four-word strings, but that's not really what happens. What happens is that babies start putting together words into some more complicated sequences. But they still don't look very much like adult language. And I'm realizing this shows how old the study of language is. This way of speaking was originally called telegraphese after an ancient technology called a telegram, when you would only use the words that were most important. You might be able to call it textese now. I personally like to think of it as Cookie Monster-ese because it's the way that Cookie Monster in Sesame Street talks. And what happens is that some words are present, but other words are missing. So at this stage, the baby might say, by now it's not baby anymore, preschoolers, say to a 3-year-old, would say things like, me want cookie, or Mama, get cookie, or cookie up there. So one thing that you can see is that verbs start making an appearance about now. So you start seeing children saying things like want and get instead of just saying things like mama and cookie and more and up. But what's just as interesting is what's missing from these words. So what's missing? Well, one thing that's missing is all of the inflections, the little sounds at the end of words that tell us what their grammatical function is. So that things like plural, the plural marker, the S at the end of cookies is missing. So even if the baby really wants several cookies and not just one, the baby will say, me want cookie. Past tense is missing too. So the baby might be talking about the fact that mama had gotten the cookie in the past, but still say mama, get cookie. Function words are missing. Things like articles and auxiliaries. So the baby's saying, me want cookie, instead of saying, I want the cookie. So in adult English, I can't say I want cookie. I have to say, I want the cookie, or I want a cookie, or I want some cookies. I can't just use cookie in its bare form. And those odd little extra words, the us and the thes and the sums and halves and the twos, are typically missing when children first start producing this kind of telegraphy language. And those also include things like what are called auxiliaries. Again, strange words in English like did or do, where it's very hard to say exactly what it is that the word means. What does do mean exactly? As in, I did want to go to the store. Okay, so what's the did? Why does that mean something different from I want to go to the store? Those auxiliary words also seem to be missing. So by the time you get to telegraphese, the children are putting words together. They're actually starting to put words together in complex strings. They're starting to recognize that meaning and ordering are related to one another. But they still don't understand, and they aren't using the inflection system, those little markers at the end of words, and they're not using the auxiliary words like and to. And another thing that happens when babies are, again, these are not babies, these are preschoolers, are starting to talk, is that they indulge in something called overregularization. And what overregularization demonstrates is that, what overregularization stems from is the fact that in most languages, including English, most languages, including English, are basically a mess, right? So instead of having some nice, simple, logical set of rules, they actually are kind of what in England we used to call a dog's breakfast. They'll have some rules that actually make sense, and then they'll have bits and pieces of things that don't make any sense at all. So for example, if you're looking at the past tense in English, when I want to say that something happened in the past, most of the time I have a nice regular way of doing it. So if I say, I walked to the store, and I want to say that happened in the past, I say, I walked to the store, I add an ed to it. But for many words, and including many of our most common and frequent words like eat, we don't actually use that regular form for past. Instead, we use these special forms that are hangovers from Middle English, like I ate the cookies. So that actually presents the children with a real problem. How do they ever figure out this mishmash of some regular rules and then lots and lots and lots of exceptions? And interestingly, when children are starting to talk, again, about this preschool period, when they're starting to understand these inflections, they show a very typical kind of pattern where the first thing they do is they actually get it right. So first children will say things like, I ate the cookies. And then they'll start to get it wrong. So they'll say things like, I eated the cookies. And when children start doing this, they're very insistent on the fact that this is actually really the way that you should be saying it. I may have talked about this at the very beginning of class when I was talking about the weirdness of children, but there's a beautiful little bit of language from Roger Brown's transcripts. Roger Brown was one of the very first people who studied language, where the little boy says, I holded the wabbits. And the adult says, you held the rabbits. And he says, I holded the wabbits. And the adult says, you held the rabbits. And the adult says, held? Can you say held? And the little boy says, held? Right. I held